I watched Karen stumble out of the water, soaked and furious, her heels sinking into the muddy grass. Her face was a mix of rage and shock. She had no idea what hit her. The metal music was still pounding, filling every corner of the yard, turning her perfect wedding into a chaos she'd never forget. Guests were running in every direction, some still trying to shield their ears, others looking at her in disbelief. Karen's eyes darted around, searching for her phone or a way out. But all she could do was stand there, dripping wet, hair plastered, to her face eyes wild with fury. I stepped back inside my house, calmly watching her try to regain control. My hands were steady, my heart pounding with adrenaline. I had planned this for days, waiting for just the right moment, and now it was happening. The loud, brutal sound wave of my cousin Ray's setup was doing exactly what I wanted. Karen had crossed a line, and I was making sure she paid for it. Suddenly, she whipped out her phone and started dialing. I could hear her voice, high-pitched and frantic, asking someone for help. But I didn't need her to call anyone. I'd already taken care of everything. I pressed a button on my phone and the volume surged even higher. The speakers roared like a beast unleashed, guitars wailing, drums pounding, an unrelenting metal storm. It was a sonic hammer that shook the ground, shattered her composure, and drowned out her desperate cries. Karen's face twisted in helpless fury as she realized her wedding nightmare was just beginning. The guests, caught in the crossfire, were covering their ears, some shouting to turn it off, others just staring in awe. The plywood covering my pool, her supposed private dance floor, began to tremble beneath the base. I had tested the setup late last night, knowing exactly how much those subwoofers could shake and crack the weak plywood. And then, with a deafening crack, the plywood split. A huge chunk of it broke loose, crashing into the water and sending a spray of muddy water into the air. Karen, in her rage, had stepped onto the weak spot. She had ignored my warning, and now she paid the price. She slipped and fell face first into the pool she had tried to hijack. The splash was deafening, and the music only grew louder, more aggressive, as if celebrating her downfall. She flailed, sputtering, trying to claw her way out, but the water was cold and unforgiving. Her soaked dress clung to her as she struggled to stand. Her hair was plastered to her face, mascara running down her cheeks, and her heels sank into the mud. She looked like a drowned rat, furious and defeated all at once. I watched her stumble out, dripping and shivering, her face a mask of rage and embarrassment. She stormed toward my shed like she was going to confront me, but she was too soaked and frantic to even get close. I opened the door slowly, still holding my permit and a soda. "What do you want?" I asked casually. "You did this," she spat, voice trembling. "You set me up. You're ruining my wedding. Why are you doing this?" I shrugged, calm and cold. "I didn't do anything, Karen. You crossed my property line, you forged my signature, and you thought you could hijack my backyard without consequences. The music? That's just a little noise. You wanted to turn my pool into your private dance floor. Sorry, but that's not happening." Her face twisted further and she tried to shout, but her voice cracked. Don't," I interrupted. "You've already lost. You lied, you cheated, and you tried to steal my property. Now you're going to leave, and I suggest you do it quietly, or I'm calling the cops." She hesitated, then spat one last curse before grabbing her towel and stumbling back toward her house. Her heels had come off in her rush. She looked like a drowned rat, defeated but furious. Her eyes burned with rage as she disappeared inside, the door slamming shut behind her. I turned off the volume, the deafening roar fading into silence. The neighborhood was quiet now, except for the splashes of water and the distant hum of the broken party. I knew she would be back, maybe with lawyers, maybe with more lies. But for now I had made my point. I looked at the chaos, the splintered plywood, the muddy water, the broken fairy lights, and felt a strange, cold satisfaction. Karen had thought she could walk all over me, but she just stepped into my trap. I had turned her wedding into a metal nightmare she'd never forget. And the best part? Everyone in the neighborhood had seen it. I knew she'd try to spin this, call the cops, or even lie about what really happened. But I had the proof, the forged documents, the permit, the video recordings. She couldn't deny the truth, and I wasn't done yet. That night I sat back on my porch listening to the faint echo of the last guitar riffs. The neighborhood was finally quiet, peaceful again. Karen's house stood dark and silent, her pride shattered like the plywood that had held her so-called party. And I smiled. Because sometimes the loudest way to stand up is with a storm of sound. And tonight I had made her drown in her own chaos. Would you have stopped there? Or would you have turned the volume even higher? The splash echoed loud and clear, and Karen's soaked figure emerged from the pool like a drowned rat, eyes wide, with fury and shock. Her dress clung to her like a second skin, mascara running down her face, hair plastered to her forehead. She looked around helplessly, water dripping from her chin as she tried to get her bearings. The metal music was still roaring in the yard, shaking windows and cracking the ground beneath her feet. The plywood over the pool splintered further, threatening to collapse completely. I watched her stumble out, soaked, furious, and defeated. Didn't move. I just stood inside my house watching her try to process what had just happened. The sound waves from Ray's speakers had done what I wanted, shattered her perfect wedding, turned her pride into chaos. I could see her trembling as she fumbled for her phone, probably dialing for help, but I had already prepared for this. I pressed a button on my phone and the volume shot up again, a brutal wall of guitars and drums that made her scream drown in the noise. Her face twisted in rage, but it was too late. The music kept pounding, relentless. The plywood beneath her, feet creaked and cracked, and then, crack. A huge chunk broke free, crashing into the water with a splash and sending muddy water flying everywhere. Karen, caught off guard, slipped and fell face first into the pool she'd tried to hijack. Her soaked dress dragged behind her as she flailed, trying to claw her way out. Her heels sank into the mud, and her hair was completely plastered to her face. For a moment, she just floated there, furious and helpless, completely drowned in her own chaos. I saw her scramble out, dripping wet and trembling, her face a mask of pure rage. She stormed toward my shed, water sloshing around her ankles, but she was too frantic to even get close. I slowly opened the door, holding my permit. In one hand, a soda in the other, calm as ever. "What do you want?" I asked softly. "You did this," she spat, voice trembling. "You set me up. You're ruining my wedding. Why are you doing this?" I kept my voice steady. "I didn't do anything. You crossed my property line, forged my signature, and thought you could steal my backyard. That's not happening. The music, just a little noise. You wanted to turn my pool into your dance floor? Sorry, I don't think so." Her face twisted further and she tried to shout, but her voice cracked. "You're a—" "Don't," I cut her off. "You lied, you cheated, and now you're going to leave. Quietly, or I'm calling the cops." Her eyes burned with rage as she hesitated, then grabbed her towel and stumbled back toward her house. Her heels had come off in her rush. She looked like a drowned rat, furious but defeated. Her hair was wet and wild, her makeup ruined. She looked at me one last time, eyes full of fury and humiliation. Then she slammed the door behind her, turned off the volume, the deafening roar fading into silence. The yard was a war zone, splintered plywood, muddy water, broken fairy lights, and scattered decorations. I knew she wouldn't give up. She'd come back with lawyers or lies. But for now, I'd made my point clear. Inside, I stared at the chaos, the broken pool cover, the splashes of muddy water, the ruined wedding decorations, and felt a strange, cold satisfaction. She'd thought she could walk all over me, but she'd just stepped into my trap. I had turned her perfect day into a metal nightmare, and everyone in the neighborhood had seen it. I knew she'd try to spin this, deny everything, or even lie about what really happened. But I had the proof. The forged documents, the permit, the video recordings. She couldn't hide from the truth. And I wasn't done yet. That night, I sat back in my chair, listening to the fading echoes of the last guitar riffs. The neighborhood was finally quiet again. Karen's house stood dark and empty, her pride shattered like the plywood she'd tried to hide behind, and I smiled. Sometimes the loudest way to stand up is simply to make noise. Loud, brutal, unstoppable noise. Tonight I had made her drown in her own chaos, and she wouldn't forget it. Would you have stopped there? Or would you have turned the volume even higher?